Hello everyone, here psst.one. Today another interview with a German artist, MXZEHN. He grew up in a professional way in Weimar, where he started with semi-analog setup that back in 1999 was normal, and he continued his career to perform around Germany and Europe, but you will see all this stuff. So, enjoy! When did your visual experience start?
Well, for me, visual started back in 1999. I was a student of architecture at Bauhaus-University. I wasn't too happy with architecture, so I started to work with 3D software, 3D Studio MX. And in 1999, Weimar was cultural capital of Europe. And a guy from our university, Reinhard Franz, he made a project called World House TV. And they built like a whole temporal studio with like MX50s, lots of cameras, monitors, a stage. And the idea was to invite artists from all over the world to make 99 days, 24 hours TV, which was streamed and on local cable television. And so we developed this kind of instantaneous television shows. You know, like guys hanging around, smoking joints, making a bit of video art, talking about it. Kind of a style that later got picked up by MTV, but this World House, basically nobody saw it. But it was such an intense experience to play with all these cameras, feedbacks with the monitors, really broadcasting, that afterwards me and two friends, Georg and Baha, we started to buy video mixers and all kinds of analog stuff and told everybody, hey, we do VJing now, and started to go to parties. So we really made that our signature, to play live, 3 people performing on this visual synthesizer plugged together of many analog devices. And a bit later, 2002, I started to work at Bauhaus-University. I was finished with studying, and there I had the chance. First project was like a VJ project, because a friend of mine, he was at the media systems department where they learned programming. And he got into this GLSL shader. They got research stuff from NVIDIA, so they developed it there, and he thought, well, actually we could use that for the stuff the guys are doing, this video mixing. So there was the university project, very diverse outcome. The objective was to make software and hardware for video performance, to be able to play live. So Baha and me, we stayed back and we founded MXZEHN after the Panasonic VJ MX10, which is in German MXZEHN, and VJ'd a lot, and there was always this, Baha worked on the MXZEHN, this analog feedback stuff, and I digitized it in MX Wendler and did like the whole mapping and remixing of that stuff.
In 1999, was still analog, or there was already a digital way to do visual?
Semi-analog, yeah, we had laptops, we built little flash stuff, because flash was the thing where you could make fluid stuff in full screen, and little 320 by 240 animations and stuff. But the thing why we always chose the semi-analog stuff is because we could run standard definition, like 720, 526, like, and everybody else in the digital VJing, they were at 320, 240, and if they had really powerful computers, 640 to 480. So we always had like this kind of arrogant saying like, your resolution sucks, because we were high resolution. So that combination of like playing with digital stuff, having some pre-rendered animations, but the main stuff happening really live, really as a performance of 3 people in that moment. And well, that was always kind of my North Star for VJing, this performance aspect. Like, that really there is an expression of something in that moment, that stuff you see, the audience sees happens in the moments when they see it. So there's this feedback loop between you and the audience. But yeah, certainly with computer software, it got like a big boost, obviously, because you wouldn't have like this huge collection. We always had like the car totally packed full with, you know, monitors, And the monitor was always like a big cube, and it was not necessarily professional monitors, it was old television, so you put the big television in your car. And
you use also VHS?
Yeah, we tried to use SVHS, and then DV came up. And that was maybe the worst time, because you had Firewire, it was great, digital video was suddenly there for everybody, but it was DV. At the time we saw it as great quality, but if you look at it now, it's just horrible. It's like, if you look at this on a 4K monitor, it's just like a stamp and not really beautiful anymore.
And now your main software is Touch Designer, right?
Yeah, well, I knew about Touch Designer for a very long time, because I was privileged enough to have Markus Heckmann as a student of mine. He also studied in Weimar for a few years, and he was already doing internships at Touch Designer. Now he's like a head of programming or something like that, so big guy, Touch Designer. I organized workshops for lots of software, so we always had Touch Designer classes and next classes, but I was just organizing because I was too busy with MX Wendler. But that software got actually really bad. I also really got not friends anymore with the guy who did it after a while, partly because the software sucked so much, and I was all the time having big problems when I made productions. And then when we kind of like really split up in Weimar, like lots of old groups, at some point you just start not being friends anymore. Then I thought, this is the time now you go to Touch Designer, because you know it's a great software. I was always a bit afraid of it because of all the programming and the node-based. I'm not necessarily a programmer guy, but since 3-4 years. And then I also had this phase where I said, well, now I'm going to do just everything with Touch Designer. However hard it's going to be in the first time. In the first time, fuck, you need months to prepare something that would have taken you maybe 2 days in your old software, but then you know that. And so I've been doing ever since, like I do.
From your experience now, what is the difference between your generation and the young generation?
Most I have to do with the young generation is actually when I teach at university. And there the main difference, I think, is now, and that's true for everything, like the whole music, and everything is so accessible. Like now the kids, they go through the tutorials, and then after 3 weeks they are very deep inside the software because they follow the tutorials. That wouldn't have been like that when I started, because it was all kind of secret knowledge. You had to find your ways, you had to know people who explain you something, you have to find your way yourself. That became very much easy today. If you think about projection mapping, like before projection mapping software, what a pain in the ass, like to prepare stuff with After Effects on location, blah, 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 render out the animation. Well, now people can just take Mapper and start. So I sometimes wonder if that whole experimental, you work on something for years, and now it's totally obsolete, all that knowledge. I don't know, you don't need it anymore because now you can use the tool. But I think it was, in general, in my generation, one major difference was we weren't afraid of the future. Everybody had told us the future is going to be great. They're just waiting for you outside, so we were like, well, make them wait. That changed very much. Young people are these days way more focused on where is this going to lead me, what is going to be my job. Now you also have young VJs who actively talk about, I'm going to have a career as a VJ, and you see how they do stuff properly, consequently. I mean, like Lucas Guterres, you also interviewed him, but you can see he's really building that thing for him, and he does a great job in it. But he's very focused, I think. We were very careless. We just did what we did. And a big part of the fun was also this finding out secret things that nobody else knows. You know how it was before the internet, also with music. Somebody gave you a tape or somebody told you about something. You had to find stuff. Now everything is there. So I think what happens and what I see is that people get more conscious about content. So VJing are often like, you know, a mixture of art and technology was very heavy on the technology side. One reason why VJing in general doesn't have the best reputation is because, sorry to say, but there's so many shitty VJs out there who produce really ugly stuff. Even when they're technically genius. But now with this new generation, I would think they're more, if they go to VJing, they're more on the arty side. They don't have to fight with the tools to like, get out something, but the tool is there, they can start. Yeah, well for me, VJing is also always like this mixture of art and technology. That's why it's important to see what's behind this. It's like architecture, I think. Architecture also has these both sides, and without regards to statics or physics, you cannot make a great architecture. Same is true for visuals. You always have to consider the technical part, and that's where what I like very much about it, because it always gives you constraints in which then you can shine, or with which you can work, which in a way also makes it easier than fine art, for example. You don't have any limitations. The format is totally open. And the other analogy I always think, especially with projections, but now also more and more with LED, is that you create space. And you not necessarily create something which is like a movie, which is very much true for these audiovisual performances, where I'm quite happy that we go back to the screen. But before, it was also for a long time to leave the screen, to explode into space with all these mapping elements, and to really create like a three-dimensional surrounding, which also follows very different laws, because the dramaturgy for the audience is more, they come in the room, they go to the bar, they go here, they go there, and the surrounding, so is their cut. If you have a seated audience and a focus, then it's very much you who guides, who leads them through time.